The Balconies of Barcelona. She stands dressed in her obsolete running gear out on the balcony of her apartment, which faces the sea. She can't see it, but she knows it's only a block away. The wind whips the tendrils of her hair, and the coolness offers her renewal. The breeze brings with it the smell of the sea, and she longs for it. She feels she needs it, having been cooped up so long in the apartment. She slips the lead on the dog, and together they slide out into the dark, silent streets below, and they head to the paseo that runs along by the beach. Facing the sea and hearing it play at the shore edge, she feels more alive. She knows she shouldn't be there, as the beach is officially off limits, but staying away when it's so close, she cannot bear. It's impossible to be in Barcelona, to be so close to the beach and not go to it. It's one of the reasons they chose their apartment, to be close to the sea. It's dark and the sun is yet to break. She is alone, but receiving all she needs, a connection to nature, the sea, the feeling of hope, of freedom. It reminds her of California, and suddenly she has a wave of homesickness. She returns to the here and now and thinks of the news, the numbers of infections and the daily deaths, which are steadily climbing, no end in sight. Collectively they worry, will this be us? It's moving from taking just the old and the vulnerable. She shakes the thoughts from her mind and rationalises them away with other facts that she knows. The dog pulls her back to reality. She looks at the horizon, which is starting to glow. Her isolation here in this moment is so wonderful, she had better savour these precious moments. They are all she can have for a while, as she can't do this often. A stolen moment of paradise. She must move soon in case a police car passes. This week there have been so many denuncias or fines for those who venture out down here or break the isolation rules. At least she has the dog and she's allowed to be out, but she is strictly too far from the apartment. She knows she can try the foreigner card and use her worst Spanish and smile sweetly. They will no doubt read her the rules and she will go home without a fine to start her day, leaving the dog curled up on the balcony among all the manicured pot plants and designer lounge furniture. She smiles at the thought of home working, a small silver lining in this time of crisis, a joy among the normally hectic professional international lives they both lead. She heads back, thinking maybe it's not such a prison after all. Yolanda wakes. She dreads the sun rising. Another day indoors. She fidgets. She hopes that she will not wake them. Not yet. She needs this time. Time to be, time to relax. Soon the chaos will begin. The clamour, the fights, the exhaustion, the energy that rises to a peak until she gives up and the TV goes on. She tiptoes out and opens the balcony door and pulls out her yoga mat. The sun is just hitting the geraniums in the flower boxes, and it illuminates them to a scarlet that lightens her mood. She pulls on his sweater and comes to her mat. She realises she is lucky, and she doesn't need much to make her realise that she is so blessed. She looks at her watch, and she knows that if she has time, and she times it right, Sergio will appear from the dog walk, bring her a cup of coffee. They will have a moment of quiet alone, and she smiles. She hopes that later, in the midst of the chaos, she will remember these feelings of peace and gratitude. She starts on her silent routine. He walks, oblivious of the dog that trails behind him, the dog who is tired of the same walk, the same block, no new smells, no new contacts, no tails to wag with. Sergio's head is fixed on his phone. Walking helps. The rhythmic pacing somehow removes some of the anxiety, dissipates it into the ground, the energy expended into the tarmac. He looks at the figures. He thinks of his family at home. How long will this last? How will they manage? The money is seeping away. That last investment, now silent due to the crisis. The chain of bars mid-renovation, earning nothing. For so long, he has been in the game, doing so well. With tourism booming, he had forgotten the last recession, and things were back on track. He thinks of the mortgage. He thinks of the cars, the new one purchased for his wife's 50th. He thinks of the kids and the school fees, the lost Easter holiday. He doesn't see her as she passes on the other side of the road. She sees him and she smiles, and she hopes that he will look up to see her. A little human connection before she heads back to the flat. A smile, a hello, but he passes oblivious. She pats the dog that she is walking and she carries on. The empty streets now haunt her. They echo, they close in. Even the sunlight isn't comforting. The shop doorways, the shutters, the bars, They all reverberate closed. She catches her breath, it jaggedly enters. She only just holds back a sob. Her chest is tight, she is lonely, alone. She thinks back to summer, the colour, the noise, the bars throbbing and pulsating with the summer passion and vibe. She remembers the laughter, the flirting, the promise of dancing. She remembers the beautiful girl that she met at the last Fiesta Mayor with the raven black hair, startling straight fringe, and the most dazzling of eyes that followed her every twirl and flick of her head. What a shame they didn't work out, and like that party, it lasted the summer and then drifted away into autumn. It seems like another world, forgotten and alien. She stands in the empty plaza and feels lonely. It's a while since her last serious relationship, and now is not the time to be alone. She makes a resolution, after this, to be serious, to think long term, maybe of marriage, and then she laughs. It just really doesn't sound like her either. Maybe it's just the company that she's craving. This one-bedroom apartment had felt like a dream when she secured it, so modern, so clean, and so hers. A time to be mature on her own. At 36, she thought she was ready. She thinks of the flat share she just left and its chaos. She craves that right now. Or her big, crazy family in Terrassa who she misses. The dog bumps her on the calves and rubs his warmth into her leg. It spreads like a glow. It's like he just knew. She reaches down and picks him up, his fuzzy warmth giving her comfort. She remembers that she isn't totally alone, and she smiles as they enter the building. It's great having a neighbour, and she appreciates that he loans her the dog for this time. It's a shame that she can't keep him, but Ramon would miss him. He too is alone, and she thinks that he is probably lonelier than she is. A car comes out of the underground garage, shatters the silence like an explosion, and as there are no other cars on the streets. The normal huge roar and honk all disappeared weeks ago, along with the pollution that normally shrouds Barcelona like a mantle. Inside the car, the woman reaches down and checks her bag. She has all she needs for now. She knows she must go in again, but she's afraid. She feels the guilt. This is her duty. She can't let them down. Her patients, her struggling colleagues. She thinks of her children she's just left in bed. She knows they're teens, and if they get the virus that they will be okay. But she still worries. The statistics are changing. Every day the parameters shift. She hears the stories of doctors and nurses who are dying too. She stops herself there. She cannot dwell on that. Never. She wonders if she should move out to protect the children. But first, practically, where would she go? Their salaries can't cover a hotel room. Also, coming home keeps her going. It's her safe space, her normality. Her husband is a moça de esquadra, a policeman. He too is in the same position. They are both needed outside, but they're also needed at home. She has no choice. She thinks of the day and her hands tighten on the wheel. With the pressure, she tries to dissipate these growing anxieties. She focuses on the needs of her patients, her colleagues, and she drives on up Gran Via, the now silent, still artery of this great, wonderful city. He watches the nurse leave as he stands on his balcony with his morning coffee. He thinks about his wife. He wants to go to her. 60 years they have been together and never been apart till recently. He feels powerless. He knows she's not far away. He knows that she expects him, that she needs him. He feels the sadness that he let her go, that they persuaded him, and now he regrets the decision more than ever. Deep down inside, he knows he was failing to care as he had, her needs becoming more physical and complex, but he wishes so much she was still here. The problem is that her mind is slipping further, vanishing to another place. He is her anchor. He knows that, and he holds her in this world. He worries now that if he can't visit, and he can't hold her hand and orientate her, she will slip away further. But he understands too why he can't visit. He could be the one that brings it in. He has seen Madrid on the TV, and he understands that with one tiny error, so many could be lost. He thinks of the 39 lost in one residential home. He knows there are others he must think of, but he feels his own pain. He needs her too. He can't have her slip. He can't face that lack of recognition. He can't lose that smile that she gives him, the one that she wore on their wedding day as she walked down the aisle, the one that she gave him as she held up each one of their children to be seen for the first time. He starts to feel grief, to experience the huge loss, one he has denied since the first signs of her dementia. He feels hopeless and lost. The bell rings. It tears him back to now. It will be that nice neighbour, Carlotta, who's walking the dog. He turns from his thoughts and goes inside to greet them. Andrew juggles his meeting, balancing time zones. He checks what time it is on the screen. He needs to call. He needs to make sure they're okay to reassure himself. He realises it's still too early there, and he will just wake them if he calls now. His attention goes back to the screens. Another meeting, another report delivered, more questions about the impact of the unfolding crisis on the industry. He texts his wife as he sits there. Although they are only metres apart, separated by a thin wall, she too is working in another closed room. He laughs at the absurdity of this, as he could have just called out, but they are trying to focus and be as professional as normal. He reminds her of their lunch date. They can sit briefly on the balcony and pretend that nothing is weird, like today is a holiday, ignoring the laptops, the commandeered living spaces that they are having to work from. He sets an alarm for an hour and a half. That should be okay. Then he can talk to his parents. He struggles to concentrate back at his desk. He thinks of the last time that they spoke, the frustration and anger that he felt at their defiant and refusals to stay in. Do they not see what is unfolding here? Do they not see Italy? Do they have such faith in their government following such an uncharted plan? They just won't listen to him nor Hannah, his wife, despite the fact she is a virologist completing her PhD here at the university. They just won't listen to them, to the idea that the best thing to do is to stay in and to protect themselves, that they should let others help. Goodness knows in their Sussex village there must be 100 willing volunteers too. He understands they don't relate to China. Maybe that's just too different. But he thought they could relate to here in Spain. He thought they would see the images of hospital beds, read the statistics, feel the fear, hear it in his voice too. He doesn't want to say it, but he is scared. There are no more flights home. He doesn't want Christmas to have been their last goodbyes. His parents are oblivious to all of this, and they carry on as before, popping to the shops, attending church, passing the day with their friends. If he has to listen to, Andrew, we have survived a war, just one more time, or to face, well, if it's my time, it'll just take me, he might just have a stroke. What with that and the growing pressures of the falling stocks, he sighs. He has failed to hear that his parents are calm, their realities different, and that while their life is normal, they are happy. He rubs his temples and tries to concentrate. He must deliver. Life in industry is supposed to be going on as normal after all. Teresa checks her phone, sees the hundreds of WhatsApp messages. She knows they will be the same. In less than a month, they have switched from the lost school jersey conversations, assignments and school trips to pandemonium and panic, each parent suddenly becoming an expert on why schools should close, all talking like they would do better in handling a world crisis than the experts. They have landed now to endless chats of which shops to go to get toilet roll, flour or organic oat milk. At least she enjoys the funnies. Humour seems important during this time. She flicks through and forwards a few to the group of her closest and dearest friends. She misses them now in isolation and wonders how they are. She worries about their circumstances. One or two are facing the prospect of no work. One, a single mother, wondering how on earth she will pay the rent now the estate agency has laid it off. And will her kids be okay or at risk going between the two apartments to fulfil the custody agreement with their dad? She texts them the video of the woman performing nightly on her balcony. Last night's Mamma Mia was so funny. They chat for 5 minutes. How they wish they were in apartments next to each other so they could perform together. And she laughs at the idea of Monse as Madonna and chuckles at the get-up she wore for their last Christmas party. Now that was a night. They promise to do a Zoom party again next Friday. The chatting and the wine breaks the isolation. As she comes back to the present, she realises she should go and see how the boys are doing. She should make sure Joanne is online. They have had 3 emails from his teachers this week. He is struggling as he sees his siblings lounging around, one back from university and the other home from his now redundant restaurant job. It seems so unfair to a 13-year-old boy that he has to go to school. She thinks how big they have grown and how the apartment now feels so tiny with their huge long limbs everywhere all the time. She was used to doors slamming and promises not to be home too late as they disappeared to the gym, the bars, the cinemas, the community centre, basically the lives that they normally led. Spanish apartments are really just for sleeping and showering in at this age. She smiles at the silence. She feels content knowing they are all home. There is peace, togetherness. It's really quite blissful to have them here, to know that what they are up to, and to know they are all safe. She realises that she's normally so lonely, and maybe that's why there are so many WhatsApp groups on her phone. It's not a sign of busy, it's a sign of emptiness and filling up the day to get by. She has a husband who she barely talks to. There is a distance that has grown over the years of bringing up the boys. She pauses and kisses the top of two heads as she passes. They look up from the console and ask what there is to eat. She smiles, disappears into the kitchen, throwing back a sarcastic comment that they only ate 10 minutes. It's only 10 minutes since they last ate. She feels like a Mediterranean mama, like her mother and her abuela before her, returning to the traditional life of a Spanish woman that, to be honest, has been lost here in the city a generation or two back. She stares at the fridge. She hates cooking. She was never a traditional woman. Suddenly she misses the normal routine, all of them out, working, school, college, eating out, a menu of the day, a canteen lunch, returning only to eat light and fall into bed. She stops herself at that, as that contradicts the thoughts from the previous positive ones, and she doesn't want that. She's trying to focus on the joys and the benefits of now. None of the negatives as they get her down. The good things cancel out her worries. Her mind wanders back to the statistics, the political bickering, the poorly commissioned tests now useless to the population they were supposed to serve. She shivers again at the horrific visions of the coffins each night on TV. She really shouldn't watch too much news. She realises that the fridge is empty and that she must go out. That weekly sensible shop gone in less days than she'd planned. In more days than she'd planned. It's living with a boy, she thinks, ignoring her own tendency to snack and the extra pounds that she has been gaining. She goes to her balcony to see if Ramon has returned, standing where he was this morning, looking so sorrowful. He passes most of his time there right now. She feels for him alone. She knows he must be missing Marie Jose. She calls across to him she's going to the shops later. If he wants anything, she can drop it at his door. She wants to stop him going out. She worries about him there alone and worries that if he may go out, he may catch the virus. She is so glad the girl upstairs is walking his dog. You never know, but it's best to be safe. We need to protect our older people right now. She fills in her police permission slip online, waits for the reply, then collects her gloves, hand sanitizer and the bags, and she heads out. The light is bright outside and it catches her unprepared. She squints and realises she has forgotten her normally omnipresent sunglasses, which are abandoned like their old life somewhere in the apartment. She waits at the bus for an empty ghost bus to come along. She waits at the bus stop for an empty ghost bus to come along. She boards and looks suspiciously at the few who are on it. She tries not to touch the steel rails and wonders if venturing out will bring back more than the shopping into their lives. She stares out of the window and she thinks how strange it is that some things that were so ordinary now feel so weird and precarious. The rumble of the bus lulls her, but she looks at all the closed, security-grated shops, bars and restaurants. She feels her loneliness and the sadness return. For each in their apartments, the days go at different rates. For Ramon, it seems endless, as it does for Yolanda. She stands among the chaos, exhausted. She misses the school. She misses her job. The kids are exhausting. Today has been the same quarantine marathon. She has been Spider-Man, Superman, a fireman, a bear, and a kangaroo. They have painted rainbows to stick on the windows, made cookies, and they have had the inevitable daily tantrums at the idea of not going to the park, the beachfront, to see friends, to ride bikes. Today she gave in and went to the garage below and dragged the two small bikes to the apartment and allowed them both to ride in the sitting room. She is now ignoring the chain oil on the sofa edge and the scratch down the side of the expensive coffee table. It's a family home after all. Thank goodness they live in a big apartment, she thinks, of the others alone with small children, and she feels relief. She feels so much for her children as they grumble and tantrum. She too would love to go out to the park, to see them run free, their carefree smiles again. She misses the cheery waves and the gossip from the park. She suddenly values those times with her friends after school closes. She tells the children it won't be long and they can go out on the balcony soon. They're just waiting for the grown-ups to finish working. She thinks what a blessing these balconies have become. Theirs is now cluttered with tomatoes, herbs, and some nasturtium seedings in yogurt pot tubs, with hundreds of homemade improvised mobiles flashing colour in the last rays of the sun. She feels proud of her new abilities to homeschool and glosses over a few of the daily rants. She pours herself a glass of wine. They are fed, bathed, and ready for bed, calmly watching SpongeBob, something she used to hate, but now she smiles as she thinks of her new love for that TV. Sergio comes out of the office bedroom and she hands him a cold beer. He smiles, but his face is so tired. She asks how today went, and he lies. A good one, all normal, dashing the thoughts from this morning away. He swigs at his beer and he thinks of the 2 staff he's just laid off. It's only Tuesday, but tonight 1 beer will not be enough. Nuria's day has gone in a blur, but her body tells her otherwise. She swings the car into the underground garage and turns off the ignition. Her back aches, her feet throb in her shoes, and her legs feel they have walked 1,000 miles. She looks at her hands, so red and sore from the endless hand washing, the heat of the gloves, and the irritation of the hand gel. She can't wait to get into the shower, to wash and rub her face that feels like it's still wearing those goggles and that mask. She relaxes at the thought of clean, safe clothes and the joy of applying soft, soothing hand balm. She's not complaining, God no. She is grateful they have all the protective equipment each day when she goes in. It feels like a perk of being in the ICU. Others are working without them, she knows. She thinks of the nurses in the residential home. Now in the silence of the parked car, she just sits. It's a ritual she's had to develop recently. She sits to be still. She must process. Where she can make sense of the day, she must transition then back to her normal life, to mum, to wife, to human, away from the robot she feels that she has become in the last week. There have always been busy days before, but not like this. It's like the nurse from Madrid said, a tsunami, a wave. It's wave after wave of people backing up, stacking up. She has worked all day, no longer 1 nurse, 1 patient ratio, but now 3 or 4. They move in teams between patients, assisting others to gently turn them, hoping that the turning will take the pressure off those very overloaded, fluid-filled lungs. She remembers the doctor on TV in Lombardy saying, it's like working in a war zone, but she feels it's worse, with such little hope. She has seen better survival from gunshots and mortars, from shrapnel and fire, from her time overseas in the army. Now they know that those who enter ICU are less likely to survive. These elderly people, she briefly ponders whether they should be coming in at all. What with this survival rate, maybe the beds are better for younger ones, the ones that can survive. But she thinks of her neighbour Ramon, such a sweet gentleman, of her parents too. She remembers how so many are dying alone at home in Madrid, and she pushes these thoughts from her brain. She winces at her thoughts, and the tears start to flow. How could she think that? She knows how important it is to help someone to a gentle death, how important it is to stand with their relatives, to calm and to comfort them, to encourage the utterance of things that should be said, to hold a hand, to gently wash a face. Those last parting moments are so vital for all involved. How has this vanished in these current times? How can people be dying alone or coping alone after a bereavement? She wonders how she will keep it together, how she will make it through. She shakes with the chills of the expending adrenaline and lets some of the sobs flow from her chest. As they subside, she picks up her bag and she heads into her other life. The sound of the pip-pip of her car echoes behind her, and she knows well that it will ring out in her ears tomorrow like Groundhog Day. These shifts are rolling into one long nightmare. At the elevator, Nuria meets Andres, or what was his name? Something like Andres, the English guy from the top floor, the one with the glamorous American wife. They normally don't speak, and they are normally rushing in and out. But today he puts down his groceries and says hello, smiles and asks how she is. He stands back and lets her get in the lift alone. She smiles and thanks him, knowing right now it's more than a courtesy. Maybe it's respect for who she is. It's certainly social distancing. But she also chuckles as it may be fear of what he could catch if they get in together. Whatever, it's nice to see him and she's glad he's home. She is glad that he is taking it seriously and not trying to go out to the office, his normal priority. She is grateful for everyone trying to slow the horrors that they are facing daily. As the lift goes up, she thinks how so much has changed. Long gone are his smart suits, smooth polished shoes, and now, like most here, they have morphed into one species and are wearing the uniform of home: jeans, sweatshirts, trainers. The door opens, and she is glad to be back. She calls out as she enters and speaks to the kids. They rush to her and push her towards the balcony. "It's time, Mama." She is reluctant, as in reality all she wants to do is shower, sit down, eat the meal Geordie has prepared for her before he went to work. But this is one of those moments of solidarity. All must stand together. She thinks if they can stay at home and are behind them on the front line, she can postpone her needs and applaud them in solidarity. It's her way of thanking them for protecting her and her colleagues too. She looks at her teens, bored and socially isolated, living a virtual life most of the hours they are awake, missing their parents who are working double shifts. She sees what it means to them and she follows them. They stand on the balconies and a roar echo around, a crescendo of clapping. It's not equal and it comes from all angles. It bounces around the districts and forms its own song. The children from upstairs add whistles, blowing like it's their only recreation, adding to the gusto of their building's response. Ramon adds a saucepan, beating out his worries with a big wooden spoon, one worn by the years of Marie-José's hands. He feels the connection to her as he bangs. Carlotta calls out like a desperate war cry, a connection with the others around, a desire. Yolanda, assisted by the wine, enjoying the release of the day, whoops loudly too. Nuria claps but gently, and there are tears in her eyes at the response. Every night it gets louder. You can hear all the frustrations, worries, the fear and the pain being expelled into the air. It underlies the huge respect and the deep gratitude for those who are working on the front line, the purpose of this event. They need to call out to those who are giving them so much faith and hope. They need to work together for an end to this all, and this is their daily contribution. Lights flash from below, a procession of police cars. Nuria wonders if Geordie may be one of them. These cars are flashing back their appreciation and cause a second wave of response, a roar of hope and of tomorrow. The clapping finally subsides and they stand for a moment. They smile, wave, pass time between these balconies, making the most of the connections. How funny that prior to this they passed in the lift, at the post boxes or on the stairs, rarely meeting properly, let alone on first name terms. But how things have changed in so little time. Now they are a community united. They slip back inside to their realities, feeling strengthened, comforted, fortified, recognised, thanks. All thinking the same. Thank goodness for these balconies. Who knew how powerful and meaningful they would become?